Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back again. Today, we're going to be having a quick session, an activities section. My name is Adewale Abati, and I'm a developer advocate at TBD. Let me see who's in chat. Hello, Rizal, Black Girl Bites. Welcome to the stream. I don't know if I should just get right into it or wait for a second for more people to come in. Let's see. I think we're good. Anyways, how are you doing today, Rizal? Let's see. All right. I think I'm just gonna get into it. Hello. I am a bit excited myself. I hope I don't want to go to complex stuff, so I'm just gonna do an introduction as the title suggests, and hopefully, people in the audience that might have questions, I'll be able to answer that. But we'll probably be starting a little bit basic today. Just get into the flow of making open source contributions, sending pull requests, and stuff like that. But yeah, while we of course wait for more people to join, I'm just gonna get started a little bit because we are on a timer, so to say. So, once again, my name is Adewale, and I am super excited to be doing this with everyone. I am a developer advocate at TBD, and today we're going to be doing an introduction to Git. So, for anyone that's just learning how to code, for example, or you're building out applications, a few years ago, so to say, when building an application, you have to build stuff locally. You start locally in most cases. Today, we have technologies that you can start building on the cloud, in your browsers, and all of that stuff. But in the past, you have to actually, create your index.html file if you're building a web application and have all of your changes, all of your projects local on one computer. So if anything happens to your computer, that is the end of your project. Or if anything happens and you want to, collaborate with a teammate, a colleague, or a friend, then more often than not, you have to, zip up your project file and send it via email. And this can be very crazy. It can get really crazy, right? Where you then have to compare changes when you send it back to you via email and all of that stuff. And this is why one of the reasons why version control was introduced. And Git is a distributed open source version control system. I remember the first time I actually came across Git. I can't remember what year that was, but I think I was trying to work on something Facebook related, one of the gaming platforms back in the days. And it was confusing for me at first because I didn't understand what the commands were. They were showing me stuff in terminal and it was just all over the place. But a few years down the line, when I actually started working with other people and they introduced me to Git, it made more sense. And I hope that is what we want to achieve with this video today. So if you're in the audience, if you're getting started with Git for the first time, drop a comment, say hello, so I can also answer your questions where applicable. I will try as much as possible to make sure that this is an interactive session. But I have a couple of points I'd just like to get through. So yeah. The first thing you need to do, especially if you want to start using Git, is understand why, which I just explained. Git is basically a version control system that allows you to track files in your project, your code, images, different types of files, right? And at the same time, be able to collaborate and work with other people on these projects. I don't have any slides, so not so much crazy images to show, but I'm gonna share my screen for a second because to get started, you most likely have to install Git. I can zoom in a sec. Excuse me. Yes. So to get started, you most likely need to install Git. And you can do this from a Google search or just go to git-scm.com. And once you do that, you find what operating system you're operating on, and then you can install on Linux, on Mac, on Windows, as the case may be. But once you have that installed on your system, the best thing that comes is that Git is also integrated into your Visual Studio Code. So from Visual Studio Code, if you start a project, for example, I think I have, oh, my bad. Link it. So I thought I had this open already. Yeah, so I have this file. And with Visual Studio Code, just go into the terminal you can, let me zoom in a bit. Much. Please let me know if you can see my screen. So if you go to your terminal and type git, you can see that the command is actually there because VS Code also is connected to your parts, your environmental parts for your system, whether it's Windows, MacBook, or Linux, which is pretty cool, right? But why should you want to use Git? Git comes in handy mostly when you're working on your own and you want to have different copies of your project accessible on the cloud. And you don't want to, if you lose the laptop, if something happens to it, you can still track your files or recover your files as the case may be. But one of my favorite things is that if you should go to the TBD website, for example, the documentation, let me zoom in again, and you click on commits, you can basically see the history of the entire project, changes that were made at different times, who made the changes, how they implemented the feature. Basically, your entire project is being, documented as it goes along with the commit messages that, trying to describe what exactly happened in this change and stuff like that. So Git itself creates a form of version history for you that they're able to execute. So how does GitHub come into the play? GitHub itself is a remote repository host for different open source, not necessarily open source projects, but Git-based projects, which is why it's called GitHub. So if you want to start into using Git locally, you can do that. But if you want to have a remote connection to it, you can use different services, GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket. But in this case, you're using GitHub because it's just, open. I think GitLab is also open, but that's besides the point. So I think the next thing I have on my list is, yeah. So for us to actually properly understand this, I'm going to create a project. So to start tracking your Git initiation in your project, there are two ways to do it, right? You can either create or clone a project that is online. For example, say I have this project that is already, on GitHub, and I want to be able to start working on this project. One way to do this is to clone it, right? So, okay, let's see. Let me show you. So you copy this URL. What this URL means is basically a direct link to the Git file for this repository. So this link is directed to this website, to this project, so that if you clone it, it actually helps you. Let me see if I can show you real quick. 1 second. You find a window. Oops. Okay, that's that. Document. Yeah. So this entire project, developer.tb website, because I've cloned it, I have everything right here. So I can zoom out. If you have any questions, please drop us in chat, by the way. I'm just trying to go through step by step, so this makes sense. For this to make sense, I created a new folder called Learn Git. I don't think that's zoomed out as well. Oops, what's that? Can't zoom that in anymore. And I opened it up in VS Code. So with this project, if I should do Git, it's going to say, I think I did Git earlier. Yes, there's no Git, there's nothing in this folder. So Git has not been initialized in any way. But if you want to make an existing project or a new project, what's it called? Git enabled, then you run something like Git init in your terminal. Yeah, Git init in your terminal and initializes an empty Git repository. What's it called? In your folder. Another way that you can do this, for example, is to actually create a new project, a new repository on GitHub. Let's see. Yeah. So you can also create a new repository on GitHub and say, let's say we call it Learn Git. A repository to Learn Git. We can choose to initialize this project, but because I want to create the folder locally, I'm going to not initialize it so that it's going to be an empty repository. Oh, choose a no, my bad. So a repository is basically a Git-enabled folder for the project that you're building. It can be hosted locally and, of course, on the cloud with GitHub or any other Git-enabled hosting service. And I feel like I've lost you guys for a second there. 1 sec. Can you guys still hear me? I'm not sure. Anywho. Oh yeah. Can you guys still hear me? Is anyone in chat? I feel like I lost you there for a second. Oh, doesn't seem like it. All right. I think I got you guys back if I lost you. So, anyways, so we have an empty repository here, which is len-git, and I'm going to create a file real quick called readme.md. So when I create this file, because I've initialized Git on this folder in the past, I can do something called Git status. Can you guys see my screen? Yes. And what Git status does is it allows me to check what the status of that Git enabled repository is. Like what has been committed, what changes have I made, what does it need to track, and stuff like that. In this case, I just created a README file. So it's saying that on branch main, I'll explain what that means in a second, but basically no commits yet, and there's an untracked file called readme.md. So what does a branch mean? With Git, like I mentioned, you're able to track different ways that people build stuff. So with branch, you can look at branches like timelines. So, I mean, if you're a Marvel fan or you follow any of these time travel movies, you understand that timeline is basically the order in which things happen, so to say. So, for example, let's say we are building a project and I'm making a certain number of changes, and someone else also wants to work on this project. And while we want them to work simultaneously, they're able to create a new branch using, for example, if I do the git branch command here, it doesn't list any branch. I think it's git branch v. Excuse me. Okay, no. One sec. Doo, doo, doo. Yep. Branch. Excuse me. Oh, the branch is supposed to be listed, but I know that's not. But yeah, I can create a new branch using checkout. Git checkout the new project. Yep. So now we created a new branch and we checked out to the new branch, which is basically creating a new timeline for us to work on. So our main branch, which exists here initially, still exists, but now we are working on a different line of work, which is our new project. So I can do the status again, and you see that this time it's saying on branch new project, no comments yet on chat files. So that is basically how branching works in Git. Let me add a few more changes here. So, okay, you know what? Let me do git add. We're gonna add the README file. So now this has been basically what we've done now is that we've added this file to the Git tracking system. So any changes that are made going forward would also be tracked on this file. The file was initially untracked. So if I do git status now, because I've added it, saying there are changes to be committed, right? The new file readme.md, but no changes. So if I make like an update to the readme file, say readme to learn git, and I save it, come back here and do git status, it's able to see that I have modified this new file that I've added, but I haven't committed it yet. So I'm going to explain what commit also means in a second. So for committing stuff, it basically says these changes that I have made over the last however long, I'm willing to put this on the network, on the system. So these changes, I want to push it to the repo, I want to push it to the timeline, as I call it, right, for Git. And once I do that, I'm going to add this again. I just like to add all. And I do this with a command called git commit. Git commit, if you send it like this, it gives you an error because you need to provide a message for it. Like, hey, what is this commit all about, right? So I'm going to create this real quick. So I have to say git commit, then m is for message. And I'm like, started a new project. Right. So we've talked about a few commands. So far, we've talked about git init, which creates a new GitHub, I say GitHub, a new Git initialization in your project, making it Git enabled. We've talked about Git status, which shows how much progress you've made, what changes you've made, what files are you currently tracking that haven't been, that have been updated recently but haven't been pushed yet, and also what files are not tracked at all. So now that we've made this commit and we do Git status again, tells us that there's nothing to commit, the working tree is clean. And now, because I have created um, a Git initialized project locally, I have no way to connect to the one online. Uh, that is why I created this project online first, then Git. And it shows here, as you can see on this page, it's saying that you can create a new repository on the command line, like we did, git init, created a readme, stuff like that, or we can push an existing repository from the command line. Technically, excuse me, we are creating a new repository, right? So we've been able to initialize this repository so far. We've added the README file. We've committed our first initialization for it. And we've also branched to a different branch. So now we can add remote, git remote add origin. What this means is that I want to connect this project at this URL. Then if you can see the link, how do you do the Zoom thing again? Take this command. I'm not sure. So basically, you can see the URL saying for this repository that I've created online, I want to connect my local repository, my local folder to it. Hello, Ola, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. And basically, that is what origin, that's what the remote origin means. We are able to connect our local folders, our local projects to a certain specific Git project. So I'm going to run this now, just copy it real quick. And back to the terminal on VS Code and say git remote add origin. No errors. So what that means basically is that we've connected this folder that I've created here. We've connected it to this GitHub repository online. And now, excuse me, one of the commands you're going to use a ton is git status. And I'm going to do that again, just to make sure that we have no untracked file. Everything is good. So git push origin. And then we've named the name of our branch that we just created a while ago, which is new project. That's it. So if you walk step by step, let's see if I can zoom into this a bit more. You basically counted the things that we've created, the steps, everything that is recorded in the Git tree locally. It's recorded them onto the tree and then pushed it to the online repository that we have. So now we have a local repository, which is this file. Everything is local. If you go offline, you're still able to make your changes and all of that stuff, but it will not reflect on the online version of it because that is the remote version until you push. So now we've introduced a new command as well, which is git push. So I'm going to go back to the browser for a second, and I'm just going to refresh. And now that you see, we have our file here, git readme, git readme. I have our readme file here that shows, hey, this project is now also available on GitHub as we have it locally. Now we can make changes, and the changes doesn't automatically sync, right? Like for example, this is a new change. Let's save that again. If you go back to your terminal, like I said, you're gonna do a ton. At least I do a ton of git status. It shows that the README file has been modified, but none of the changes that we made locally, excuse me, is gonna make it to the online one till we commit. Till we first of all we add this change. Like, hey, I made this new change. I want you to add it to this tree for me, which is git add. The official term is stage. Like, hey, these changes are made. I'm ready to push it online, and then you commit that change to the tree. The tree is tied to your branch. If I'm confusing in any way, please just ask questions in chat and I'll explain further, right? So when you push it to your branch locally, you have a local version of your branch, which is basically, like I like to explain, your timeline. So you have your own timeline locally, and then you can choose to push this timeline to the main timeline, which is the remote version, right? Because once you start collaborating with other people, they are also connected to the remote version. So anyone right now, I'm gonna see if I can add this in chat. I should be able to. Yes. So anyone right now can go to this repository, do the same thing I did earlier, and clone it. And once they clone it, they are also then connected to this online version of the project that I created locally a few minutes ago. And that is basically how fundamentally open source projects work, right? Excuse me. I've been talking for a minute. Yeah, so that's basically how open source projects work. Someone starts building stuff locally, everything is going on. Sometimes they collaborate locally as well. Um, they can create a remote version of the project early on, but make it private so not everybody can see it. But then you can decide to, make it public, and then people start to use it or contribute to it. But more often than not, for you to have a project online that people can contribute to, excuse me, um, you tend to create something called a contributing guide, right? Let me just make it. Let's just go. It's a markdown file. This is how to contribute. Excuse me. One repo. Make the changes. Push. Voila. So now there's something that's happened I would like to also explain in a second. Let me push this change again. The status. Like I say, check what has changed. So now this is a very unique scenario. I had readme.md already pushed online. So readme.md is already being tracked by Git, which is what it means that when I change it, it's telling me that this has been modified. But contributing guide.md has no history at all. It has never been on the Git tree, none of the branches. I just created it afresh. So now there are two types of files, the ones that we've modified and the ones that are new. There are different ways to say git add. I'm gonna do git add. I think it's -h. Help. I think that should work. Is that it? Let me zoom out a sec. Yeah. So you can do git add, -n, -v, -i, -p, and stuff like that. Git add -u basically allows you to only update files that are already being tracked, right? So for example, if I do git add -u, it's gonna add readme.md, but it's not gonna add a contributing guide that I just created because that's not being tracked yet. So one of my favorite I like to use is just git add -a, which basically add changes from all tracked and untracked files. That is when I want that to happen, right? So it's one of my go-tos, just git add -a, and it basically adds everything to the tree. So instead of now I have two of these files. Push, origin, new project. Excuse me. So now, no, oh, sorry, I didn't commit. Did I commit? No. So that happens when you did not commit because I still have the files added stage, like, hey, these files are ready to be committed, but I have to commit them, like actually write them to the tree with a message that says added contributing guide. This message, if I don't know if you've read it about previously, is called the commit message. And as often as possible, you want to try to make it descriptive. So if anyone is going through the project, like I showed earlier with the TBD documentation, you can see from the commit message that this is what this change means. So added contributing guide kind of describes accurately what we did with this change. So now I'm going to push this to new project. Is that the name of our branch? See, I forget this a lot, which is why I go back to git status and then I see the name of the branch yet again. So git push, origin, new project. Now, to explain the timeline thing a little bit more, if you go to the project, I'm going to refresh again one more time real quick. We have the contributing guide, basically almost instantly. But then right here, we'll see that our branch is new project. Oops, my bad. I made it default because that was the first one I pushed to, right, instead of main. Naturally, that is my bad actually. Normally, you should have, what's this? Oh, where's my VS Code? Gotcha. So normally you should have, let me check out back to the branch. So now we have just one branch, new project, which is my bad. So I'm gonna change this to create another branch again. Check out the main. So now we have a new branch called main. So git status main. But before we proceed, because I made the new project the branch, the default branch, you see that there are no other branches. I just created the main branch now, but it doesn't appear here because I haven't pushed it yet. I've created it locally. So there's a local version of my Git tree, my changes, all of that stuff. But until I push it online, which is something that happens a lot when people make changes, they commit it, but they don't push it. If anything happens to your laptop or your project locally in that period of time, you lose all your changes. So it's recommended to create like a branch. You can push to that branch at any point in time without being worried that, hey, this is going to affect the main branch of the project because it's separated, right? But if you don't push it and anything happens to your local file, your local repository, your local folder, those changes are gone because there is no connection to the one line. It hasn't been pushed and written on the internet for that to exist. So I want to, real quick, excuse me, make a change. Let's say, okay, so I was actually going to move to our next step for anyone watching. Create a folder called contributors. And then I'm going to create a new file in here with my name, ace.md. Let's say I contributed to the learn gigs. So this is the next step on our intro today. So far I've explained how to what Git itself means, how to create a new branch, how to push your changes, how to keep your changes and keep working on stuff, and what it means. But now it's October, so it's the month of Hacktoberfest, and you start to hear stuff around pull requests, merges, and working with other open source projects, right? So our main branch in this case here is new project. That was my bad. It should have been main, but I named it something else entirely. But I've created a new branch now. So I'm actually going to move to check out say feature add name. So I have a new branch I've created now called feature add name. So now, when you clone an open source project, for example, you do not have write access to that project. So you cannot just directly commit to the main project. So more often than not, you would have to fork the repository. I guess I have to explain that separately as well. Let's see, how do I explain that? So for example, if you find, how do I explain this? 1 second. So for example, if you find an open source project like say Knox community sitemap module, I do not have write access to this, but I want to be able to, commit or make changes. It's open. It's the Hacktoberfest. I want to make open source contributions. I want to make a change to this project, but it's not my project. I have no permissions whatsoever. The way to do that is to hit the fork button. So what the fork button basically means, it's kind of similar to timelines with Git, but let me see what's the best way to describe it. But in this case, you are creating a copy of your own online on the internet instead of just cloning locally. You're creating your own copy online, but that copy that you're creating online is still connected to the main one. So you can do anything you want, either branch it off entirely and build something else, especially the license permits it, or use that to like push and pull and then make a final pull request to the main project. So for example, if I fork this repository, it asks me what I want to fork it to, what the name is going to be, descriptions, and then you create a fork of a specific branch. Now, going back to my own profile, you see that now this project exists. This is going to take maybe a second or two, depends on the size of the project. But it is always connected to the main project itself. So with Git, there's always an history of stuff, right? How things happen, how they're connected, how the changes you made, how the changes are made. So now this is my copy, for example, right? SK sitemap module. But all the changes that were made in the past are still here because I literally just cloned or took a fork of everything that has happened in that project, the entire history, and I took it over to my own account to have permissions and I can contribute to it and send it back out. But the reason I explain this is because I want us to run a bit of an exercise, especially for anyone that is new to this entire thing. And basically what I want to do is for each person to also try and simulate a pull request or what's it called? Sending a commit, a pull request to this repository that I just created. And this is how we do it, right? Like I said, when you don't have write access to the main repository, you fork it like I did, and then you clone it and do the steps I showed earlier. But in this case, status, have contributors, which is this file and this one. Now I'm going to say git add, all the things I already explained in the past, git commit, add my name to contributors. Now I do git push. What's the name of this feature add name? So that's the name of this branch that I'm on. So for context, I just made a change in a different branch. If I go back to where was I? Where was I? Yeah, git learn. If I go back to the branches on this now, I think it should be, yeah, there's a default branch and there's the branch I just created locally and pushed to it. Excuse me again. So now, if you look at this, this is the main branch, and this is the branch I created to make a change. Right beside it, it says new pull request. What does a pull request mean? A pull request is basically saying, hello, I have made a couple of changes here. I have written code that is supposed to be good. It passes, it works, and I want you to be able to add this code back to your project. So I'm requesting that you pull this code to your project, or as for an admin, if you're a member of the project, pull this to the main branch, pull this to a separate branch, pull this to a specific branch. But basically saying, I have this set of changes and I'm requesting that you pull it over to your hand, which is referencing the maintenance in this case. That's basically what a pull request means. So if I create a new pull request, it starts from the branch I want to pull the request from, excuse me, which is the feature add name branch that I created a while ago. And then what branch do I want to push this request to, right? Which is the base default one for our project, new project. So I'm more often than not, you'll find repositories that have like templates for pull requests. So you have to like follow a guideline in this, but this is just a simple example. None of that exists. So I can say, hey, I added a feature. This is what it does. It allows people to add stuff. And then you create a pull request. So now in another lifetime or another scenario, if I wasn't the maintainer of this project, I would just, it stops here for me while I wait for them to check it out and then comment on some of this, like, hey, make these changes, do all of this. The maintainer is able to come here and see like, oh, this is what the change is, this is the file they're adding, this is what they want you to contribute, and they can run tests if they want to, right? A lot of it is already integrated into the repository. But seeing that I am the maintainer in this case, point in quote, I'm able to say, hey, I like what this is, and then I merge this pull request. So what does merge mean? Merge is saying, I've seen your changes, or I've seen the changes from the specified branch, and I want to combine it with the changes or with the current status of the branch that I'm currently managing, which is the current branch I'm in, right? So foreign branch, current branch. So I'm merging this pull request now. And what that does is it basically collapses the branches, collapses the timeline, right? The timelines have now joined. Loki is now alive again, and all is well. Sorry, that was a Marvel reference if you didn't get it. But basically, if I now go back to the main branch and I click on commit, for example, I would see that this is the commit I created on the main branch initially. This is the commit I created on a separate branch. And also this is the commit that merges those two branches together. So as you can see, the issue is continuously tracked. And at the same time, um, the branches are also being merged, and you can see when stuff happens. Sometimes you can even revert some of this, but basically that's how it works. So now, as you will check now, you'll find that in the main branch, the changes that we made now exist, right? So now I have a contributors folder with my name in it, and I want to run a. I don't know how many people are in chat. I don't know if anyone is here, but if you are, I'd like to run an example again. I shared what's it called? I shared the link for the repository down in the chat. So I wonder if anyone is in chat. If you are, of course, and see if you can clone this, clone this, create your own branch, and also add your name. So create a new file, whatever your name is, ebony.md, and your own branch, and send a pull request so that I can add your name to this contributors folder, basically. So I don't know if anyone is in chat. If you're in chat and you want to do this, just drop a comment in 30 seconds so I know to wait. But if you're not in chat, or if you cannot do this right now, then I can just proceed to the next thing. But I'd like us to just try it so that I can, if anyone runs into any issues, then I'm able to answer the questions or show like the steps, stuff like that. So if you're gonna do this in chat, just say hello for one quick second before I move on to the next thing. Is there no one else? No one? No one? Okay, let's see. What do I have else to explain? Okay. To be honest, I think that was most of the steps. To be honest, I was hoping this was more interactive, but I'm guessing everyone can, of course, watch the recording at a later time. And if you have any questions, I hope I've made this as clear as possible. But if you have any questions, do check out Discord. I'm guessing that's where most of you are probably from. You can check out our Discord. What's it called? Can anyone drop the link to Discord? Use discord.com. GG, I don't even know. And we have an Hacktoberfest channel. I should be able to share that screen. Yeah, that was correct. Okay. Discord.com, search invite. Oh, gotcha. I have my name, but nah, that's fine, Ebony. That's fine. Thanks, Rizal. So yeah, you can also just join our Discord channel. We have a bunch of people already ready to help, ready to answer any questions you might have about Git. I hope the stream has been helpful so far for anyone that got any clarification or even a reminder on some of the commands that they can use. I missed out on a bunch of commands. I was hoping people will ask questions and talk about stuff together. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We've come to the end of the stream. I don't have any more tips or intro to share till next time. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Ebony. Thank you, Rizal and Chad, for saying hello. Thank you for stopping by, Ola. I'll see you all at a later time.